Review your vendors exclusively with ratings and questionnaires.
That's your good advice with ratings?
I thought I was bad advice.
I'm going to get to you in bad advice. I'm starting you with good advice. Start with me with good advice. Give me some good advice.
Good advice. Assess all of your third parties for inherent risk.
Okay, that's good advice. Arcady, give me some bad advice.
Use the same set of requirements to all your third parties.
Okay, that is some bad advice. I'm coming back to you, Paul. Give me worse advice than that.
Worse advice. Scope down the companies that you assess to only the ones that the business has decided were critical.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. Let's begin.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Welcome, everybody, to Super Cyber Friday. Our topic today is hacking effective third-party risk management. An hour of critical thinking, of going beyond questionnaires and ratings. Paul thought he was starting with bad advice, but he was starting with good advice. And we're going to go beyond questionnaires and ratings, and we all know they're, well, not a lot of fun. Hey, our guest today, you just heard a moment from them. Arcady Goikhberg, who is the CISO over at Branch Insurance over there, and Paul Valente, who is the CEO and co-founder of Viso Trust. Let me just repeat, everybody. I used to call it not that, but it's pronounced Viso Trust. So remember that. And guess what? They're our awesome sponsor today, Viso Trust. They're going to be helping us out with this very discussion. All right, lots of different great ways to participate, and you are familiar with them. Our bad idea is how not to manage third-party risk. I'm sure you can come up with a lot of really bad ideas on this one, but we also want your 10% tips on how to improve third-party risk. So just label them bad idea or 10% when you submit them. And remember, the best bad idea wins an awesome CISO Series fleece. So if you've not won one of those before, get in with your bad ideas, and you can vote often. So you don't have to just submit one bad idea. You can have lots of them, which, by the way, if Dutch is with us, we know he's got lots of bad ideas. You can join us on video at any time with Bring Me On. You can ask a question. If you look in the upper right-hand corner or on the little toolbar, there's a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. I know you've got questions about third-party risk. Get those in. Obviously, you can vote for you can be in the chat room, and you can also vote for your favorite question as well. Let me just mention our schedule: good advice, bad advice, worse advice, your bad ideas, your 10% tips. We will play the public interest, and we'll play Fantasy CISO, and we will have our meetup at the very end. If you have never come to one of our meetups before, I don't want any more excuses. You're showing up today. And I don't care if you've got surgery planned, you're showing up afterwards. So at the end of the hour, you're going to click the link at the bottom of the screen, which will join our meetup. But right now, that link can take you to register for next week's Super Cyber Friday, which is hacking detection and response. Here's the great thing. You click on that link. It opens up a completely separate window. You can register for next week. You won't fall out of this chat. You'll still very much be in the chat, but you can register for next week's as well. Please do that. All right. Enough of me and my nonsense. I'm going to start with you, Paul, on this. Oh, weird. I think can we even ourselves out again, Aaron, here? The thing about questionnaires and ratings. All right. First, let's just talk about why don't they move the needle on any kind of third-party risk management. And it's bizarre. We still use them, and yet we all know they're a failure.
Yeah, so I'll start with questionnaires there, David. Anybody who's spent a lot of time on both sides of this understands that questionnaires are filled out in a highly biased way, right? They're often filled out by salespeople, maybe SEs, people that are highly incentivized to give positive responses. They're essentially going to try and reverse engineer what do they have to say to get the deal. Now, in good faith, many of them are thinking, hey, we can probably get this done in the time that we're doing business with this third party. If we're not doing it today, they're giving themselves the benefit of the doubt. But in reality, that doesn't happen. It usually doesn't, right? So that's questionnaires. Highly biased, false sense of security.
When I say bias, I got to assume people are filling out questionnaires thinking what is not true for us, but what they want to hear.
Exactly. Now, ratings. That's a little bit more complicated. But if ratings worked, security would be a solved problem. If we could all just point something, an open source intelligence scanner, and that would tell us whether we were secure or not. Wow, wouldn't all of our lives all be easier? And if you could even do that on companies that you know nothing about, right? Anybody with zero information to start. Well, in fact, the methodology that those companies follow is that they buy databases of business information that have domain names.
Mhm.
They scan those domain names. They use DNS to discover IP. And what do they get? They get a CDN. They get a shared IP address from Amazon. They get an elastic IP. Best case, maybe they get an owned IP of a WordPress marketing site. Now, what's the likelihood that that is connected to the corporate infrastructure of the company that you're trying to assess? What's the likelihood that that is connected to the production infrastructure for the products and services that you are
I'm going to go
interested
with
in?
little to
right?
zero.
Little to zero.
Mhm.
Yes. So security hygiene on marketing websites, yes. High signal on what's important about a company's security program, maturity and posture and level of risk, not so relevant, right? Now, the highest the most significant findings that they deliver are most commonly due to misattribution. Oh, that's not our IP address anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe the ISP database is incorrect, right? We all know that attribution is very, very difficult. We all know that those databases are haphazard at best, and that there's little you can get from that sort of
All
scan.
right, let me ask Arcady. Arcady, my feeling is everyone at one time dealt with ratings and questionnaires. You must have had a third-party security program that was built on that. Explain what the heck was going on at that time.
Well, there are two sides to TPRM, the sell side and the buy side, right? So currently I work for a consumer business, and my customers who buy insurance don't ask for SOC 2 report. But I do still have partners, and I work for a regulated entity. So that means my TPRM program is more on the buy side, in the sense LS sells vendors that we rely on to conduct our business. So that's very different perspective. I look at it through a very different lens. And so I don't necessarily right now respond to a lot of questionnaires, but in the past I did, when it was in the opposite, where I was selling to the regulated entities. But I wasn't working for a regulated entity myself, so that was very much a flip side. To give an analogy, what Paul said about ratings, like think about it as almost like buying a house, right? You could conduct some visual inspection on Google Maps. You can walk around it. You can observe things. So when you have zero data, it provides some signal. But when you buy a house, you want to hire an inspector to go and examine plumbing, AC, electrical, like all sorts of other things, termites, which would not be possible to get from an outside vantage point. So it depends on like how you classify your vendors and how you do things. People have to realize the fidelity of information coming in addition to the accuracy, to the point that Paul was making.
Okay. So are you seeing any vendors doing self-servicing, solutions like, well, we're going to be talking about this soon, like when they create trust centers where they're serving up the information? I mean, this is definitely a better solution because it seems a little bit more legitimate. You're nodding your head here, Paul. Yes? Oh,
yeah, I mean, I think any what those trust centers allow folks to provide is access to some degree of evidence and artifacts of their security program. Now, those evidence and artifacts vary dramatically in quality and depth and usability and insight, right? But but analyzed appropriately, they can give you an excellent signal with regard to risk. Now, obviously, every company, different portal, different content. So I can't say that across the boards, but the concept is certainly good. On the other hand, as well, for folks that do rely on questionnaires, the companies that have enough clout and have enough business, essentially, they use those to, talk to the hand, right? I'm not going to answer your questionnaire, or at least in case you're doing a
so there's a lot of
deal
power
in there.
struggles going on here. Yes, is that
Absolutely.
what you're saying? Let me go to you, Arcadia,
makes
on
a big difference.
So clearly, so let me do like good, better, best, right? So if I am a vendor which sells to regulated entities, large, right, they clearly will have the leverage, especially if it's a large deal. And you will see this even in the smaller tech startups. They're saying if you want a SOC 2 report, you have to be at enterprise level of subscription. If you want us to answer a questionnaire, you need to be spending that much money with us because there are costs associated on both sides. So the Trust Center on its own provides an easy mechanism to consume information, right? It provides, there is a certain level of maturity. Across all my vendor ecosystem, there is probably 20-30% which actually have maturity to have a Trust Center and to have some sort of third-party certification, whether it's SOC 2 and ISO, right? And they publish their privacy policy and they publish some collateral which then I can consume and answer maybe 90-95% of my questions, which optimizes this for everybody.
Let me pause you on that. Have you seen, actually, for either of you, have you ever seen any third party that is like the poster child of, oh, if everyone did it this way, this would be wonderful and we wouldn't have problems? And can you describe what you saw and what they did? Either one of you have seen just a beautiful example.
I'm going to jump out and say no. And the reason that I'm going to say no is because the third party, the vendors, the third parties can't do it for you. They cannot do the risk analysis for you. They can provide the information that's useful, but then your challenge is parsing, digesting, analyzing that information. If you have a diversity of vendors, they're going to give you things that reference different standards, things according to, for different types of relationships and data sharing characteristics, right? There's no one size fits all, right? There's more than 50 frameworks out there across various regions. It takes a lot of expertise that not every TPRM team, frankly, no TPRM teams have. No single TPRM team has.
I agree with Paul. There are two things here. One is, on one dimension, how is it for me to get the information which will provide answers to majority of my questions, typically not all, right? Because Paul is right. Ultimately, I need to assess it in my own context, using my own framework for assessing risk. Which we are trying to optimize for how make this process less frictionless, right? Remove some of the barriers to this so we can just get to the meat of it quickly. So when I talk to my peers on the vendor sides, I usually have 3 to 5 questions, because if there's a mature company, they already provided the collateral which answered most of it. What we can improve on is recency, and some of the reports could be outdated. Can I rely on it? There is also, maybe Paul is right, there are different frameworks. So it's not like there's GARP and everybody's supplying 8Ks and 10Ks the same way, no financial statements look the same, right? So it makes it difficult. I need to go and normalize things into my own framework just to understand whether what they have is what I expect them to have given the information what they're processing. I see some improvement in this space where some companies publishing portals, and it's not just audit artifacts, but some of the information presented more near real time. So there is some automation which measures control effectiveness, and they're comfortable enough to publish it to their customers. But that's very nascent right now. There are not that many vendors which actually do this.
All right, we got a lot of questions that have come in. I'm going to address one, and then we're going to go to our first game. So, lots of good questions. I want to get to them. All right, try to give me quick answers to this so we can get to our very first game. What do you think is the most pressing here? This comes from Dustin Sachs. What is the most pressing TPRM, third-party risk management concern, or risk that organizations are overlooking? So not the most common one, but the ones guys, why aren't you paying attention to this? And is that, and I will just qualify, Dustin's question was, that's a tough one to answer because everyone's risk structure is completely different. What do you think, Paul?
I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to give 2 because I said one of them already. One of them was essentially data quality. The second one is scale. if your process is inefficient, it's not fast enough to stay ahead of the business decisions, and if it isn't efficient enough to scale to all the vendors that could bring you risk, right? Not just the ones that are business critical, then it's essentially game over. You're not going to have an effective program. It's not going to be meaningful. And that is very, very commonly overlooked.
That is a great answer. Arcady, give me a quick answer to this question.
I'm going to emphasize meaningful.
Okay.
The results need to come up with the meaningful synthesis that then you can then share with your business, right? They need to understand the residual risk, and you need to articulate it in the business terms. And if your reviews are not providing that, then you're going through the motions.
All right. We have a game to play.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
There it is, the public interest. The audience likes to play along with this game. What you're going to do is you're going to get 4 questions here. You're going to see 4 questions, and let's see how well you do. The audience will play along. I will just stress it's extraordinarily difficult to go 4 for 4 here in how simple this game is. You'll see in just a moment. Here we go. Question number 1. Most average monthly search queries, what gets more, assessment or questionnaire? What do you think, Paul and Arcady? What do you think?
I'm going to say, gosh, I should know this, but I don't. My marketing team sure does.
Guessing what others.
I'm going to guess questionnaire.
And by the way, you should keep in mind that this is all Google searches, not just people searching for third-party questionnaires, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, these words are all, of course, both used in a ton of different contexts.
Right, exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, no one knows these. It's John puts up. Yeah, no one does.
And I'm not going to open Google Trends in another window. That's my guess.
By the way, we are always surprised by the answers here. Okay, so you're going with B, questionnaire. What do you say, Arcady?
I'm not sure, but I'm going to follow the wisdom of the crowd. I see a lot of comments referencing B, so I'm going to go with B.
All right, you never know because often they are wrong. Let's see what happens. By the way, I didn't create this. Our producer Rich did, so we're going to see what the answer is.
Have the crowd up here somewhere.
Yes, the wisdom of the crowd was not right. It was assessment. So unfortunately, your potential for going 4 for 4 is out. So you're both scoring 0 right now. Let's go to the next one. Vendor or supplier? This is a good one. What do you think, vendor or supplier?
Does it matter who goes first?
No, it doesn't matter. Either one.
I'm going to go with vendor.
Vendor?
I'm going to go with... I'll just hedge the risk of both of us here, and I'll go with supplier.
All right. One of you is going to be winning. The other one will not. It is vendor by almost a 3-to-1 margin there. All right. So vendor is what people prefer. All right. So, Arcady, you're in the lead right now. All right, here's a tough one. Sharing, planning, rating, or monitoring. What do you think gets most? And by the way, just so you know, like the reason we have all these different letters is that the audience is off by a few seconds. So, like if we did ABAB, we would never know what's answering which question. So that's why you see different letters for each one. What do you think? Arcady? What do you think?
I'm going to go with, it's a tough one. Going to go with rating.
All right, rating. And Paul?
If we were talking qualifying searches on TPRM space, I would say monitoring. But if we're going with just English language, I'm going to say sharing.
Okay, rating for Arcady, sharing with Paul. What is it? You're both wrong. It's planning. Okay. Well, there you go. And by a significant margin. Did anyone get planning? Let me see. I don't see any Fs. Oh, no, Katie got planning. Good job, Katie. All right, last one. All right, here you go. The acronym got TPRM, VRA, SCRM, DPIA. I don't know if I know all of those acronyms, but which one do you think it is? We want it to be I for today's discussion.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the one I want it to be.
Okay, Arcady.
Well, then I get to hedge the bets, right? Somebody's got to be right. So I'm going to go with the DPIA.
Okay. So Arcady, by the way, is in the lead with one right. But So we're going with TPRM and DPIA. Either Arcadie's going to be in the lead, or there's going to be a tie here. We're going to see what happens. Correct answer is VRA, and also again by a whopping mile. I don't even know what does VRA stand for.
It's
Do you
the
know?
same as it's the vendor thing again, vendor risk assessment.
Vendor
But
risk
who knows? In
assessment,
terms
there
of
you
Google
go.
Trends, there's a million different VRAs. It's
Yeah,
probably
there could be
veterans,
different
you know,
VRAs.
some
There
sort
could
of
be
veterans.
the
related
Veteran
something.
Resource Association or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Good point. There could be a lot of different VRAs out there, and that's why this game is super tough. And yeah, Aaron, see if you can like realign us here. All right, this comes to the point, Paul, where I want you to explain what the heck Viso is doing with regards to third-party risk management. So, with all the things that we've sort of pointed out that are frustrating us, how are you addressing this at Viso Trust?
Yeah. So I'll share, David, a little bit about the story to help folks understand there. So for folks that don't know, prior to founding Viso Trust, I was a longtime chief information security officer. I was the CISO at Restoration Hardware, Lending Club, ASAP. Spent decades on both sides of third-party cyber risk management, and especially at highly regulated companies. Particularly when I was at Lending Club, we were growing very, very quickly, needed to bring on new solutions very fast, and we're also highly concerned about risk. We set up a program according to industry best practices that we thought was lightweight, but turned out to be labor intensive and slow. It caused procurement delays, stakeholder frustration, gave us, poor quality data, was very disruptive, had us branded as, Department of No, killing innovation, etc. Right. And so my co-founder and I really tried everything, whether it was risk exchanges, ratings, questionnaires. It was just poor quality data, too much work, low vendor adoption, just really miserable on every side. And we turned to assessing using artifacts of the security program that already exist. If you think of that in its most basic, you hire your first security engineer, they've got a job description. You build a program, there's a security policy and standard. You start caring about security, you start getting quality pen tests from third parties. Then you move into other trust activities, right? Various types of third-party audits. And we found we could get way higher signal. And so as far back as 2016, we started experimenting with using AI, and this is, pre-Gen AI, to assess third parties based on artifacts of the security program that already exist. We patented this approach in 2017, and after years of research, released the production platform in 2020. So this unique technology is called Artifact Intelligence. It essentially references really any framework, but covers more than 50 frameworks today, allows companies to instantly and accurately assess third parties, getting really high signal information. So it's a completely new approach, and it's vastly superior to previous ones, allowing folks to achieve scale and data quality.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty awesome, and I want to get more tidbits to that. But I'm going to mention this. I'm going to put up a poll right now here. It's visible as we speak. If you would like a warm handoff to Viso Trust, Viso, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, Viso. I'm sorry. I said Viso at the I did the wrong way. Viso Trust, excuse me. If you'd like a warm handoff to them, please respond in the poll right there with their very unique take on third-party risk, which is something we've all been frustrating. And yes, great, awesome. People are already expressing interest in that. That poll will be up for the entire time, so feel free to answer that. Now, Arcadie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a customer, yes?
That's right.
Okay. What got you interested in this solution, and what was the unique thing that it's doing for you that you just didn't have before?
Sure. We were really aligned on how we were thinking about vendor risk management from like the approach perspective, right? You need to understand the context of the relationships and which controls you would expect a vendor based on the relationship. So if it's a professional services versus SaaS versus some other type of relationship where you buy shrink wrap software, for example, you would expect to have different set of controls. We also were relying on artifacts provided. We didn't love the questionnaire. I kind of like to treat my peers on the vendor side with a level of respect and not waste my time and their time. And if they put in the effort to develop a trust portal, I would love to use it.
Mhm.
The benefit to me was I can get all the documentation from the trust portal, upload it into the Visa Trust platform, get a synthesis of what's there, what's not, did they have any exceptions, with zero manual effort. And then I could have a conversation
This gets into the scaling issue that you were just talking about before.
Precisely, right? So I can reduce my headcount depending on the number of vendors, right? So we are fairly small. So to me, I believe I served somewhere around 2/3 of an FTE. But also, I can get you the gist of the issue very quickly, and I can understand the materiality of that issue, whether it's worth to have a follow-up conversation with the business, whether it worth to have a follow-up conversation with my peer on the other side. And I'm not wasting my time. I'm not wasting their time. It's like, hey, we believe we need you to have this control. Does it make sense? Do you agree? Maybe it's not a documentation. Can you talk about it, whether you have it or not? Oh, you have it. Great. Can you include it in the scope for SOC 2 next year? And they're like, sure, great. So that was a 5-minute casual conversation. We got on the same page and we're done, right? And similarly, if there are some material issues, I can bring this to my business and say, look, this is the residual risk that we'll be carrying if we do business with this vendor. Are you willing to accept it? And somebody says, yes. I could say, well, it was really that risk acceptance is above your pay grade because of materiality of the data, right? And the sensitivity of the data, the volume of data, and all sorts of other things, right? So the vendor cannot accept, the business partner cannot accept the risk above the pay grade. And we have all of that defined.
Let me just also, I want to quote Neil Saltman right here, and I want to just get a clarity from you, Paul. If somebody mispronounces your company name, will you not sell your product to them? Or you are willing to sell your product even if they mispronounce the name?
As much as it may hurt my feelings, paying customers can say whatever they want.
Okay. But if you don't pay, then that's your crime. All right, cool. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. Hey, if you have not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen to register for next Friday, Super Cyber Friday, please go ahead and do just that. That will save you time. But you can also always go to CISOseries.com and you'll be able to see that. We've got a boatload of bad ideas come in. Definitely. Do we have any? I saw a few 10% better tips, but please get some of the 10% better tips. Dustin Sachs says rate vendors only using ratings provided by your Sidekick. That would be probably almost equally as good, I'm thinking, as ratings from the sales staff. What do you think, Paul? Sidekick or sales staff?
Similar.
Very similar. Because, by the way, the Sidekick tells you what you want to hear too. So
exactly.
I wouldn't think it'd be much different.
What's interesting is who's better at reverse engineering what you want to hear. That would be a great thing for your show. Have a psychic, have a salesperson, see which person can interview and figure out what to say. All right.
David Cross has a very popular question. David Cross is CISO over at Oracle SaaS Cloud. And he asks this, here, I'm going to put it on the screen here, which everyone seems to want to know the answer. I don't believe anyone has the answer to this question, but we'll ask it anyways. Will there ever be a standard for cybersecurity questionnaires, you're already nodding your head, that all businesses will use as vendors will not answer or respond to random questionnaires written in varying languages and terminology? And I think he answered the question. I think we all know. Can we just flat out say no, not a chance?
Not a chance.
Or Katie, you're on that too.
And it's absolutely not a new idea. It's a 20-year-old idea. Mm-hmm. And whenever somebody thinks that it's the right idea, we just get another standard, right? Or another questionnaire, right? Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I think, okay. Let's go to, well, I think, by the way, my guess is for this one comes from Dustin Sachs too. And my guess is your answer is, I think we've got it. But tell me what you think might be stage 2. What do you feel is the biggest innovation needed to help TPRM mature as an industry? I'm assuming you want everyone to believe it's Visa Trust. Is there something else though in the pipeline? Either of you, Katie or Paul, jump on.
So I think, one thing to mention there, obviously our platform is built on a suite of AI-based tools, uses a number of different approaches. Arkady, am I right? You didn't believe me the first time, you heard me talk about what this is, right?
I was fairly skeptical.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
there are two innovations. One on the buy side, this is where the Trust operates, is if you need to assess a lot of vendors, there are now more effective and efficient tools for you to get to the gist of the problem and understand the residual risk for each vendor and do it at speed and scale. On a sell side, again, there are also companies which introduce automation, whether in answering the questionnaires or whether it's like delivering the artifacts and the collateral for the trust portal, right? Or automating compliance into ISO and SOC 2 frameworks and so on and so forth. So there is a number of innovations on both sides, and I think they're complementary to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's getting an inventory, understanding your third parties at the entity level, understanding what they do, understanding their maturity, monitoring them. These are things, that we do today and we're always expanding on, right? We also allow you to mine essentially nth parties from the artifacts and from public sources and put you in a position to start monitoring real ecosystems. Now, there's a ton more to be done there, right? There's more that we're adding all the time, right? There's more potential to integrate this inventory, which is rapidly becoming your whole infrastructure, right? Companies are approaching 100% of their technology footprint being either owned or accessed by third parties. There's all sorts of opportunities to turn this into security operations for third-party risk, right? As that becomes more of your sphere of influence from kind of traditional internally focused security operations, right? You're still going to have your own software stack that you develop to monitor. You're still going to have, your own controlled infrastructure in your cloud to monitor, but your most of your attack surface is going to be outside of that, right? And so there's a ton of potential, and obviously AI is a big thing to take advantage of there. Not a panacea. It's nowhere near what some folks think, but or some folks tout. We all know things like ChatGPT are essentially large language models, which we use, of course. We don't use ChatGPT, but we do use large language models in some areas. In addition to, as I said, a suite of other techniques, are not a panacea.
But I would just say that the acceleration that we've seen in AI is proving itself to be more and more valuable, literally on a weekly, monthly basis.
Absolutely.
I want to quote Craig Colley. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it. He has a 10% tip here that he's labeled a good idea. I'm going to relabel it as a good luck with that idea. And his idea is ask your vendors with high residual risk scores to contribute to your company's cyber insurance slush fund. That would be great if that could actually happen. I love that, Craig. Let's see if that will ever happen. If you have not registered for next week's event, please do that now. We got lots more good questions that have come in. Let me see. Okay. Since many companies, and this actually, and I've heard variations of this, like we had a guest on before that if their client was a customer of theirs, meaning that if they were a customer of theirs, they got X numbers of security controls set up there, then they would automatically get cyber insurance, which was kind of another way of answering this question that Dwayne Grant has here. Since many companies undergo a close examination answering their security questions for insurance, could we save a lot of time asking our vendors to share that Q&A document, which could be that standard document we were looking for, but you're nodding your head, not a chance in hell. No?
No, I mean, all the same problems as any questionnaire, right? If you've applied for cyber insurance, obviously you want to get the best deal on your insurance, right? So you're going to put your best foot forward and yeah, they have the same issues. In fact, quite a few cyber insurance companies have adopted VisoTrust and actually use that to assess their insured, right? Which is testament to artifacts and evidence and automation with an expert in the loop being much better than questionnaires.
All right. Let me just also mention some of our 10% better tips that have come in. Hold on, wait, whoops, here. There's a lot of tying to Destin Sachs has a couple of tips on tying TPRM decisions to data classifications as well. Have you done that, Arcady? You're not
absolutely. That's how we tier vendors. It's the most important thing, I think, is thinking about what type of vendors to do business with and tier them in terms of sensitivity, criticality, and by criticality I mean availability and integrity. And then apply different thresholds of what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and Viso, does Viso help you with this, Arcady?
Absolutely.
Of course, I expect.
Yeah, we get to the gist of it. Like, nobody is perfect, right? And I don't expect my vendors to be perfect. But I would like to understand what is that residual risk that we need to be talking about, right? And how do I get to that very quickly? And sometimes, I do have vendors, we, check all the check boxes, but, it's a very small percentage of vendors who read that level of maturity. And we have a majority which do not, right? And I would like to understand what is the gap and whether it's material, and, under what scenarios that gap may lead to unacceptable outcomes. And then, like, what they quantify those outcomes in, like, dollar amount in the losses, right? Whether it's regulatory fines, whether it's breach notification costs, whether it's an ability to conduct business, you can quantify it to a business partner and say, look, we understand you want to do business with this, but this is the residual risk which the company will be assuming by entering into a contractual relationship with the vendor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, when developing the platform, we have conducted a deep study of the cost of breach across the globe with regard to different data types, different industry verticals, different regulations, and built a taxonomy that makes it very, very simple and easy to determine inherent risk, and also, as Arcady mentioned before, determine control scope based on how you're working with this vendor and what the data and scope is, right? That's in a NIST 800-30 base risk model. We use data types to calculate impact, essentially. And it's a very practical approach, and it very, very quickly gives you access to how should I tier my vendors and what are the next steps I should take, right? One of the things that we've seen in the 10% come up, which relates to that question about the questionnaires in terms of a standardized questionnaire.
Sure.
What we don't have, we'll never have the questionnaire that's for everybody, but I think that there is that there's a different way of thinking about it. I think criteria is much more important, and standardization of assessment and risk determination is much more important. I think we need to get out of the mindset of needing questionnaires and instead wanting to analyze controls and their level of assurance based on assurance-related tasks that have been applied to testing those controls in order to determine risk, right? And that means incorporating standards, valuable standards of information security. Now, you, in your assessment process, you may align, let's say, to NIST 800-53 at your company. And I mean, if it was a perfect world for you, then every other company would do that too. And so you would assess everything based on NIST. But in reality, different companies have chosen different frameworks, right? And so you need a platform that understands that, covers that diversity, and can turn that into control coverage and risk in a meaningful way, right? And you can do that actually without focusing on questionnaires and with a very high degree of accuracy.
All right, we have a new game to play.
It's time to play a brand new game.
So it isn't spanking new for our audience, but we just haven't created the new bumper for this. But this is a game called Fantasy CISO. Here's how it works. You are just going to select one by one, and being that Arcady, I believe you won our public interest game. You will go first here. You select any one of these controls. You'll go back and forth to essentially choose your roster, and then we're going to see which one of you is best suited to handle the attack. By the way, while we're playing this game, let me also remind everybody, the poll is still up to get a nice warm handoff to our fine friends and sponsor, Vice O Trust. So please, if you're interested in that, please respond to the poll over there. All right. So, Arcady, why don't you pick one of these, and you're going to go back and forth between you and Paul. So, Arcady, you're first. Pick which one do you want first?
I'm going to go with EDR.
EDR, okay.
I'm sorry. What do we pick these based on, David?
Well, you don't know what your attack is going to be.
Oh, okay.
So this is like you're picking your team, your security team. These are the controls that you get, or the environment that you get for your security program. So what Arcady says, well, the first thing I want if I'm building a security program, I want my EDR. So which one do you want?
I'm gonna agree with him completely. But should I build on what he's done, or should I?
You can't, because he's selected. Like
Yeah.
your building team.
Okay.
He's already picked that player. That player is no longer available. You got to pick another one.
I'm clicking here and nothing's
Oh,
happening.
no, you don't click. You don't click. I click. You
Oh,
just tell me which one you want.
Oh, I am going to want to have, I'm assuming that I'm a company that develops software. I'm going to go with a application security program.
All right, application security. Whoops, there you go. All right, what do you want, Arcady? Going
That
back
would
and
be
forth
my
on it.
second choice, by the way. I am going to go then with penetration testing and red team exercises.
Penetration testing, okay.
Great choice.
What do you want, Paul?
Great choice. I'm going to pick access control management.
Okay. Arcady, what do you want?
Data recovery capabilities.
Okay. What do you want, Paul?
I'm going to go with asset management.
Asset management at the top. Arcady, you choose.
I'm going to go with email and browser protections.
All right. Paul.
Incident response.
Instant response. There we go. Arcady.
Control administrative privileges.
Okay, and then you get the last one, which is security awareness. So now what we do is, here we go. Now we go over to here and we see this Arcady's, this is his roster, EDR, data recovery, controlled use of admin privileges, pen testing, and email and web browser protections. But Paul has asset management, asset control management, security awareness and skills training, application software security, and instant response management. Now, what happens is we reveal the attack, and the attack is an active SSO session has been stolen from an engineer with production access. All right. I want you each to give your argument, because right now, please put up the poll for both Arcady and Paul. Please vote who you think is best situated to manage this attack. Arcady, what's your argument that you're best situated to manage this attack?
That would be one of the test scenarios would be tested during my pen testing red team exercises.
Okay, so you think that that's your best. And Paul, why do you think you have I think there's one obvious one for
Of course, my job is just to argue for this. So our incident response program is going to be monitoring this and able to take action immediately.
Well, you also have access control management. I should also point out
Absolutely.
there too.
Which
All
all
right.
the logs are informing our incident response program.
Let's see what the poll is saying right now. All right. First of all, we have a lot more people in that are watching that are not voting. So get in there and vote. And I hate to break it to you, Arcady, you are not doing well. You're doing very poorly. All right. I'm going to give a 10-second countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7. If you want to try to get a vote in there for Arcady, do it. Arcady, you should vote for yourself. 6, 5. It's a look like Paul's going in for a landslide. 4, 3. Arcady's getting some sympathy votes, it looks like right now. 2, 1, 0. Paul, you blow him away. Congratulations. Good job. All right. With that being said, let's get back into some of our questions. And by the way, I want to just say kudos to the whole chat room. You guys have been blowing it up here, and
Thanks, folks.
thank you for awesome chat. I want to get to some more of the questions here, and we have got 15 minutes left, and we're going to be doing our meetup afterwards. If you have not clicked on the link at the bottom of the screen, please do that. Register for next week and stick around. If you not come to our meetup, I want you to stick around. I'll be there. Arcadia will be there. Paul will be there. By the way, Paul, are you hiring over Viso Trust?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. We've got positions open. Please check our website.
Well, you'll also be available in our after show, right? So they could talk to you directly as well. All right. This was a question I wanted to ask before we played the game, and I'm going to ask it now. And this comes from Neil Saltman, who is a salesperson himself. What's the easiest way to speed up TPRM on the vendor side? How would you recommend helping your customers and supporting them through their processes? I want both of you to answer on this. I'll start with you, Arcady. If you could have your vendors doing this and you could help them, what would you want them to be doing?
Two things. Having a trust portal, that's a certain level of maturity. You already thought through all the questions which been raised to you in a prior customer engagements, and you have specific audit artifacts, and you kind of listen to the market signal and reacting to it by developing collateral and publishing. The second, and don't make it hard to get. Like if I'm an existing customer, the NDA should be covering my ability to get access to this documentation. If I'm a prospect, clearly there needs to be an NDA in place, but don't make it hard. Right.
All right. What's your advice here, Paul?
That's great advice. I'm gonna index really high on the easiest, and I'm gonna think of as cheap or free as easy as well. So, shameless plug here, but not one that makes us money, but something that'll help you. You can register on our website. We have a free offering called IQR, where you can upload your relevant artifacts of your program, perhaps questionnaires that you answered in the past, whatever security documentation you have. And IQR will allow you to automatically fill questionnaires that you receive from companies. You upload the empty questionnaire, download it full, along with references to what artifacts those were found in, 99% accuracy. Similarly, you can plug in Slack or Teams or whatever you need to for your sales team into AI Q&A. So that's something that we've done for the community to make this easier for you. So
is there like a confidence measurement on this? Like we're very confident that this answer is right. Like, like a percentage meter of how confident of the AI answer? Yes? No?
There is an indication of assurance level and value, and an indication of specifically artifacts that it was
right, because you can link to them.
And there's pros, comments, and description of information that is synthesized from your artifacts.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to do one quick thing here. Now I'm going to do the wrap up of the show, but we still have 12 minutes left. So there's plenty more show left to go, but I just want to mention this now. We'll kind of get it rolling here. Hey, huge thanks to our sponsor, Viso Trust, for sponsoring this episode. Remember, please, the poll. If you want a nice warm handoff to all the awesome stuff, and this questionnaire that fills out stuff for you through using AI and giving you the confidence and link too to make sure it's correct, please, happy to make that introduction for you to Viso Trust. Hey, in a little over 100 minutes from now, so we are going to be doing our Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review show, and we got Gerald Auger, who's chief content creator over at Simply Cyber. If you're not familiar with Gerald does a show which is based on our show. We have our show, Cybersecurity Headlines, which is just 6-7 minutes long. But if you would love to jump in and get some context around that and chat with other people, Gerald does a daily show that plays our show in its entirety and comments on it with a lot of other people too. So we're going to have him on our show commenting about our news from the week, which is what he's been doing for the past week. Anyway, so he's got lots of great commentary. Stick around for our meetup. You actually can change that, Aaron. Change that link to, that's our link for our meetup. You can actually click on this. Anyways, everyone is welcome. It says from students to CISOs and everyone in between. We would love to have you stick around And please don't all join like one giant, but be in multiple different sort of groups and discussions. You'll see, you'll be a floating bubble and you can connect with other people as well. If you want to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday, just email me at david@csoseries.com. We have 2 spots left in April, and then we don't have another one open up until like June. So if you want to jump into that, please let me know, and we can do that. All right. We have 10 minutes left in the show. Let me go to a question, then I'm going to ask you some final questions as well. This one, this sounds like a rating company, what Blake Roth is saying, but this is what Blake says, and it's only seen the beginning. I've heard of attempts to create a centralized database of third-party responses managed by a, quote, broker of sorts, where you can pay for access to questions with some kind of approval process. That's never seemed to come true. Isn't this a ratings group? Any chance something like that takes off someday? Isn't this ratings, Paul?
No, I would describe this as what we call the exchange model, right?
Okay.
Which there's been plenty of examples in history. I'd say the most prominent one was recently purchased by another company, right? Essentially, the first example of this was something that I interacted with, I don't know, decades ago, BITS, which later became Santa Fe Group and Shared Assessments, and there's many companies that have tried this. Typically, they are plagued by, or universally, they're plagued by low vendor adoption. That's the problem, is that vendors, there's no one exchange that is the one exchange. Mm-hmm. And so it's work for vendors to get stuff on there. They have to sign off for their information to be shared, perhaps without their knowledge or ahead of their customers understanding their value or interacting with them, right? And anybody who's been a vendor will understand that that's not what vendors want to do, right? Mm-hmm. They're also often, as Arkady mentioned, context is really important. The assessments lack context. They're also typically questionnaire based as well, so not that much higher value. And they are also point in time, with some of these exchanges not getting updated for 2 or 3 years for a particular vendor relationship. So, lots of downsides. Everybody loves in their minds the write once, read many, but it's just never borne fruit. Now, what you can do with AI-based capabilities today is you can train models to analyze all these different artifacts, and the models provide the scale that's necessary for you to assess any company super rapidly, right? And it's no longer necessary to have done the assessment beforehand, right? Because to Arkady's point about portals, all they have to do is provide the information, and it can be analyzed for your particular business case, your particular risk appetite, immediately using automated techniques, this is what VISO does, right?
Okay, cool.
To put a bit more color,
go ahead, Arkady.
Paul was saying, we wish about things, right? So we wish everybody spoke English, or at least one language, right? And been multiple attempts to do this.
Remember Esperanto.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't get much adoption either. So in reality, we live in a complex world, and we need to embrace that complexity, not necessarily trying to simplify it, right? Mm-hmm. And the way you embrace that complexity by building translation models from one framework into another, you normalize into something which makes sense to you, and then you assess it, right? So there are ways of dealing with gravity. There are ways of dealing with complexity, right? We just kind of accept that, yes, that's the world we live in, and there are mechanisms we can deploy to simplify this for us.
It's great insight.
All right, let me ask you, what time we got 6 minutes left. Let me get final question. We're going to start with you, Arkady. What have we not talked about in third-party risk management today that we should have addressed?
I think, clearly we have a bias being CISOs to talk about cyber, but there are other dimensions to TPRM which lay outside of cyber. Vendor financial viability, vendor exposure to geopolitical risks. Those are just an example, right? There are other dimensions to it, which I don't think many programs reach to maturity. in assessing.
What about you? I'm going to ask you the same question, Paul. What have we not talked about with third-party risk? By the way, all excellent answers, Arcadia. That was all good points. What have we not talked about that we should talk about?
One thing that's on a lot of companies' minds today is AI trust, right? And we know it's the early days for this, right? There's the NIST RMF 1.0. There's the first version of OWASP top 10 for LLMs, and several other standards in the works. CSA is in the depths of working groups working on what I believe will be a very powerful standard when it comes to fruition. This is obviously a big issue for companies today. Every business stakeholder is trying to find products and find ways to incorporate AI for their particular business functions. And so it's another reason that TPRM teams and security teams can be, inundated with TPRM requests, and ones that they're not necessarily so on top of dealing with because AI trust is so new. 6 months ago, we released the AI trust module based on those frameworks. It's essentially prompting companies that get assessed to build these programs, right? Because not all of them have these programs. But it's a big issue, and so definitely an important one, and one of those other segments that Arcadia was mentioning, right? There's lots of areas of third-party risk, and there's always more emerging ones. As we get better at one, we're going to need to expend resources on the next priority.
Yeah, privacy is another one, for example, right? So we mentioned about AI, but many companies will go and change their terms of service online. Maybe they'll notify you.
I got one today. Yeah, exactly. It happens all the time.
Maybe they notify you, maybe you notice, maybe it goes to some notice mailbox, nobody looks at.
Spam.
So how would you know that the vendors changed the contractual framework and now is able to use your data to train their models?
Yeah. Oh, good point. All right. I got one last question. This comes from Randall Hedinger. And Randall asks, how are you viewing and assessing identity providers in TPRM? I'll start with you, Arcadia.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I think he's just wondering, if it's a third party, company that's offering, it's a vendor that's offering an identity solution.
Of course, I have one of those, and it's very important, right? That will be my tier one vendor.
I'm assuming, you're all your vendors, but are you assessing them differently, being that they're dealing with identity, which is a huge, huge issue? How do you deal with them differently?
I don't think I deal them differently than any one tier one vendor. I mean, we kind of understand the context, right? We understand what controls we would expect them to have. And clearly breach that vendor will have a huge blast radius.
Right.
So it better be a solid company.
All right.
Yeah.
Quick answer. We have less than a minute and a half left.
So on the VISO Trust platform, in the data types, one of them is authentication credentials, right? To Arcadia's point, that's gonna put all the technology related controls in place, everything from information security, everything from privacy, if you're dealing with customer or employee data. The platform, our platform, covers, so our customers can reference 7 different risk dimensions in addition to cybersecurity. So obviously for a vendor like that, you're gonna run the gamut.
All right, cool.
For a very, very high level of assurance.
Let's wrap this up. I'm going to be giving everybody 15 seconds to do this, because or less than that, 30 seconds, or no, that's more than that, 30 seconds. Because the warm handoff, if you would like it to VISO Trust, go ahead and click that little poll right now so we know who you are, so we can make that introduction. Also, you could also just chat face to face, because he's going to be available in our chat, which if you click on the darn link at the bottom of the screen, you will get to that right now. So click on the link, go ahead. You just sort of register and just join us. If you've never joined us before, please join us. We would love to chat with you. It's a really fun after party type thing we do, and we'll have a lot of fun. Huge thanks to my guest, Arcadia Goikhberg, who is with Branch, and also Paul Valenti of VISO Trust, and the whole VISO Trust team for making this so darn awesome. And my team. That would be Andrew and Aaron and Rich for producing a fantastic show. This thing takes a lot of work, and we appreciate it. Aaron, take us out. Click the link at the bottom of the screen.